At dinner, my son smiled and said, "We have a gift for you." He handed me a folder. Inside was a $250,000 loan in my name. His wife added, "Sign it tonight, or we're ruined." When I refused, he slapped the table and screamed. 10 minutes later, security dragged me out. I pulled into Daniel's circular driveway at exactly 7 o'clock, just like he'd asked. The mansion looked even more impressive in the evening light, all stone and glass rising 3 stories into the darkening sky. Professional landscaping lined the walkway, and warm light spilled from every window. My son had done well for himself as a financial consultant. Better than I ever imagined when he was struggling through college 20 years ago. The memory hit me like it always did. Mom and Dad draining my college fund to pay for my brother's medical bills. "Family takes care of family," they'd said. "You understand, don't you, Harold?" I'd nodded and worked construction instead of getting my engineering degree. Some patterns die hard. Claire answered the door with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Harold." So glad you could make it. She wore an expensive dress and jewelry that probably cost more than my monthly pension. The house smelled like catered food, not the homemade meals she used to make when they lived in their starter home. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, handing her the bottle of wine I'd brought. She glanced at it briefly before setting it aside. Too cheap for their tastes now, I guessed. Daniel appeared from the kitchen, looking sharp in his tailored suit. "Dad?" Perfect timing. He hugged me, but his shoulders felt tense. "How was the drive?" "Fine." Traffic wasn't too bad. I followed them into the dining room, where a table for 3 was set with china and crystal. Professional catering staff moved quietly in the background. "This is quite the setup." "What's the occasion? Can't a son treat his father to a nice dinner?" Daniel's laugh sounded forced. He pulled out my chair, a gesture that felt rehearsed. Claire brought out the first course, while Daniel poured wine from a bottle that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. They seemed nervous, exchanging glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Daniel drummed his fingers on the table between courses, and Claire kept checking her phone. "So, Dad, how's retirement treating you?" Daniel asked during the main course. "Can't complain. Keeping busy with the garden. Thinking about that fishing trip we talked about." "Right, the fishing trip." Daniel's smile faltered. "About that. We might need to talk about timing." Something cold settled in my stomach. This wasn't a celebration dinner. This was a setup. Claire returned from the kitchen carrying dessert and a wrapped folder. Daniel's eyes lit up with an expression I'd seen before when he was planning something as a kid. "Actually, Dad, we have a gift for you." Daniel took the folder from Claire and slid it across the polished table. "Something we've been working on." I unwrapped the folder slowly, my hands suddenly unsteady. Inside was a stack of official-looking papers, bank documents, loan applications, all with my name printed neatly at the top. My breath caught in my throat. There, on the signature line, was my name written in ink. But I'd never signed these papers. I'd never even seen them before. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Claire leaned forward, her mask finally slipping. "We need you to sign those tonight, Harold. We're in trouble, and this is the only way out." Daniel's hand covered mine, his grip too tight. "Dad, we have a gift for you," he said again, but his smile had turned predatory. "We need $250,000, and we need it now." My hands trembled as I flipped through the loan documents. Every page contained my personal information: social security number, banking details, employment history, even my mother's maiden name. Information I'd never given them, information they'd stolen. "How did you get all this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Daniel's expression hardened. Does it matter? What matters is that we're family, and family helps family. I studied the forged signature more closely. It was good. Very good. Someone had practiced copying my handwriting, studying old checks and documents. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment scheme. This was months of planning. You forged my signature. The words came out flat, factual. Claire jumped in, her voice rising with manufactured panic. Harold, you don't understand. We're going to lose everything. The house, Daniel's business, the kids' college funds. We need you to make this official tonight. Make fraud official? I set the papers down carefully. That's what you're asking me to do. Daniel's face flushed red. It's not fraud if you sign it now. It's just backdating. People do it all the time. I looked around the dining room, really seeing it for the first time. The security cameras positioned to capture the table. The way Claire had her phone ready to record. The notary stamp sitting on the sideboard, waiting. You've thought of everything, I said quietly. We had to, Daniel snapped. You've been so stubborn about money lately. Always talking about being careful and living within means. But what about our means, Dad? What about what we need? The words hit me like physical blows. This was the same script my parents had used 30 years ago. Family need trumping everything else. My sacrifice expected, demanded, taken for granted. Remember when I helped you through college? Daniel continued. All those times you took me to baseball games, bought me cars, paid for my wedding? You owe us this. I owe you? I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. I owe you $250,000 because I was a good father? Claire's tears looked real, but her timing felt rehearsed. Please, Harold. Think about your grandchildren. Do you want them to grow up knowing their grandfather destroyed their family over money? The manipulation was textbook perfect. Guilt, obligation, family loyalty, threats disguised as consequences. I'd fallen for it before. I'd sacrificed my education, my dreams, my financial security because family needed me to. But not this time. No, I said simply. Daniel's chair scraped against the floor as he stood. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, I won't sign fraudulent loan documents. No, I won't legitimize identity theft. No, I won't enable whatever financial mess you've created. Daniel's mask finally dropped completely. His face twisted with rage, and he slammed his hand on the table hard enough to make the crystal ring. You selfish old man, after everything we've done for you, all those dinners, all those family gatherings where we included you instead of putting you in some nursing home. Daniel. My voice carried a warning he ignored. You're not family, Dad. You're just the ATM we keep around for emergencies. And this is an emergency. The words hung in the air like poison. Claire gasped, apparently shocked by his honesty, but I noticed she didn't contradict him. I picked up the fraudulent papers and folded them carefully. I'm leaving now. Like hell you are. Daniel moved toward the door, blocking my path. You're not walking out of here until you sign those papers. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Are you threatening me, Daniel? I'm saving our family from your selfishness. Two men in security uniforms appeared in the doorway, like they'd been waiting just outside. Daniel had planned for my resistance. Mr. Morgan has become aggressive and threatening, Daniel told them smoothly. Please escort him out. The security guards looked uncomfortable but moved toward me. I held up my hands, staying calm. I'm leaving voluntarily, but I'm keeping these papers as evidence. Evidence of what? Daniel sneered. Identity theft, forgery, elder abuse. Choose your felony. The color drained from his face as the security guards flanked me. unsure now who was the real threat. I walked to the door with my head high, Daniel's shouts following me into the cold night air. "You'll regret this, old man. We'll tell everyone what you really are." I turned back once at my car, looking at the mansion that had seemed so impressive an hour ago. Now it looked like what it was, a prison built on other people's money, staffed with people willing to commit crimes to maintain their lifestyle. My son stood silhouetted in the doorway, still shouting threats I could no longer hear over the sound of my car engine starting. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 10 minutes, engine running, heat blasting against the December cold. The fraudulent papers lay on the passenger seat like evidence of a crime, which I realized they were. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. Every red light gave me time to process what had just happened. My son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike and helped with homework and walked down the aisle at his wedding, had tried to steal $250,000 from me. Back in my modest ranch house, I spread the papers across my kitchen table under the overhead light. The loan application was thorough, professional, and completely unauthorized. Someone had accessed my credit report, my bank statements, even my employment records from before retirement. I opened my laptop and logged into my credit monitoring service. The results made my stomach drop. 3 unauthorized inquiries in the past 2 months. Someone had been checking my creditworthiness, planning this fraud long before tonight's dinner. My phone rang. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message. "Dad, I know you're upset, but you're overreacting. Come back tomorrow and we'll work this out like adults. Family doesn't throw family under the bus over paperwork." I saved the message and started taking pictures of everything. The forged documents, the unauthorized credit inquiries, screenshots of my banking app showing account balances Daniel shouldn't have known. Each photo went into a folder on my phone labeled Evidence. The doorbell rang at 9:30. Through the peephole, I saw my neighbor Sarah holding a casserole dish. "Harold, I saw your lights on late and thought you might need some comfort food." Sarah Martinez had been my neighbor for 8 years, ever since her husband died, and she moved into the smaller house next door. Retired legal secretary, sharp as a tack, and the kind of person who noticed everything that happened on our quiet street. "That's very kind of you, Sarah." I let her in, grateful for the company. She took one look at the papers spread across my table and set down the casserole. "What's all this?" I explained the evening while she examined the documents with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent 30 years in law offices. "Harold, this is serious. This isn't just family drama. This is multiple felonies." That's what I told Daniel. Identity theft, forgery, elder financial abuse. She picked up one of the loan documents. "The signature's good, but not perfect. See here? The pressure's wrong on the downstrokes. You press harder on your name than he did." "You can tell that?" "Honey, I've seen more forged documents than I care to count. This one's practiced, but it's still fake." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling my friend Janet. She's a victim advocate with Elder Services. Sarah, I don't want to make a big deal out of this." She stopped dialing and looked at me with the same expression my wife used to wear when I was being stubborn. "Harold, your son committed identity theft against you. He tried to defraud a bank using your name. He had security guards ready to intimidate you into signing. This is already a big deal." The truth hit me like a physical weight. I'd been thinking about this as a family problem, something to be handled quietly, swept under the rug like all the other times I'd been taken advantage of. But this wasn't family borrowing money or asking for help. This was crime. What do I do? Document everything. File reports with police, the bank, and the FTC. Get a lawyer. She squeezed my shoulder. And stop thinking of this as something you caused. You didn't make Daniel forge your signature. You didn't make him commit fraud. He made those choices. I stared at the papers again, seeing them clearly for the first time. This wasn't about family obligations or helping someone in need. This was about a man who thought he could steal from his father and get away with it because I'd always been easy to manipulate before. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Dad, Claire is crying. The kids are asking why Grandpa hates us. Fix this." I showed the message to Sarah. She shook her head in disgust. "Manipulation 101. Guilt, emotional blackmail, making you responsible for his choices." She handed me back the phone. "Don't respond. Every communication from now on becomes evidence." I saved the message and turned off my phone. For the first time in 30 years, I wasn't going to fix someone else's problem by sacrificing myself. The folder labeled Evidence was getting thicker. The text messages started at 6 in the morning. "Dad, we need to talk. This is urgent. You're destroying our family over money. Is that really who you want to be? Claire didn't sleep all night. The kids are scared. Fix this." I documented each message with screenshots, then forwarded them to the email account Sarah had helped me set up specifically for evidence. My phone kept buzzing throughout breakfast. By noon, the messages had escalated. "You have 24 hours to reconsider. After that, I can't protect you from the consequences." "I told Mom and Dad about your selfishness. They're disgusted. Last chance to do the right thing." I was adding the latest screenshot to my evidence folder when my doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Daniel's BMW in my driveway, and a woman I didn't recognize standing beside him on my porch. I opened the door, but left the chain latched. "Hello, Daniel." "Dad, this is Patricia Lewis. She's a notary. We can get this whole thing sorted out right now. No hard feelings." Patricia looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from foot to foot. She was young, probably new to the job, and clearly hadn't been told the full story. "I'm not signing anything," I said through the gap. Daniel's friendly mask slipped. "Dad, you're being ridiculous. It's a simple loan, family helping family." "With forged documents?" Patricia's head snapped toward Daniel. "I'm sorry, what?" "Nothing," Daniel said quickly. "Just a misunderstanding about backdating." I opened the door wider so Patricia could see me clearly. "Miss Lewis, the documents you've been asked to notarize contain my forged signature. I never signed them, never agreed to this loan, and never authorized my son to use my personal information." Patricia stepped backward. "Sir, I can't notarize documents if there's a question about fraud." Daniel's composure cracked completely. "You stupid old man. Do you have any idea what you're doing to us?" "I'm stopping you from committing more crimes." "More crimes?" His voice rose loud enough that I saw curtains moving in neighboring windows. "You think I'm a criminal?" "I'm your son." "Criminals can be anyone, Daniel, even sons who steal from their fathers." He stepped closer to my door, his face red with rage. "You want to see what happens when you cross us? We'll tell everyone what a selfish, bitter old man you really are. We'll make sure the whole family knows you chose money over your grandchildren's future." Patricia had backed all the way to the street. Smart woman. "Are you threatening me?" I asked, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "I'm warning you about consequences. You think you can humiliate us and walk away? You think there won't be payback?" Mrs. Chen from next door had come out to get her mail, but she wasn't fooling anyone. She was watching Daniel's meltdown with growing alarm. "You have 1 day to reconsider," Daniel snarled. "After that, we do this the hard way." "What's the hard way, Daniel?" "You'll find out." He stormed back to his BMW, leaving tire marks on my driveway as he peeled out. Patricia had already disappeared down the street. Mrs. Chen walked over, her face concerned. Harold, is everything okay? That young man seemed very angry. Family disagreement, I said, then stopped myself. Sarah was right. I needed to stop minimizing this. Actually, Mrs. Chen, could I ask you a favor? Would you mind writing down what you just saw and heard? Date and time it? Of course. Should I call the police? The question hung in the air. Should she? Was I ready to take this that far? I thought about Daniel's threats, his promise of payback, his willingness to intimidate me on my own property. I thought about the forged documents and the months of planning behind them. Not yet, I said. But thank you for offering. Back inside, I called Sarah. He brought a notary, I told her. Jesus, Harold, he's really doubling down. Mrs. Chen witnessed him threatening me. She's writing it down. Good. You need witnesses to his behavior. She paused. Harold, I think it's time to call that lawyer I mentioned. I was hoping it wouldn't come to that. Honey, it came to that the moment he forged your signature. Now he's escalating to intimidation and threats. This isn't going to stop on its own. She was right. I'd spent my whole life hoping problems would resolve themselves if I just stayed quiet and didn't make waves. But Daniel wasn't going to back down. He was going to keep pushing until someone forced him to stop. Give me the lawyer's number, I said. My phone buzzed with another text. I hope you're proud of yourself. You just destroyed your own family. I forwarded it to my evidence folder and dialed the attorney. Michael Torres had a voice that commanded respect and an office that backed it up. Law degrees on the wall, professional photos with judges and politicians, and shelves full of legal books that looked like they'd actually been read. Mr. Morgan, Sarah Martinez speaks very highly of you. She says you need help with elder financial abuse. I spread the evidence across his conference table. The forged loan documents, screenshots of threatening messages, witness statements from neighbors, and copies of the unauthorized credit reports. Torres examined everything methodically, occasionally making notes in careful handwriting. His expression grew darker with each document. This is textbook elder financial abuse, he said finally. Identity theft, forgery, attempted bank fraud, intimidation, and threats. Your son has committed multiple felonies. What are my options? Several. We can file criminal charges with local police and the FBI. Identity theft across state lines becomes federal jurisdiction. We can pursue civil remedies for damages. We can get a restraining order to stop the harassment. How long would all that take? Criminal charges can be filed immediately. Restraining order hearing could be scheduled within days. The civil case would take longer, but we have overwhelming evidence. He leaned forward. Mr. Morgan, can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Why did you wait so long to come see me? This has been going on for months. The question hit harder than it should have. Family loyalty, I guess. Not wanting to cause trouble. Family loyalty? Torres's eyebrows rose. Sir, your son stole your identity to commit bank fraud. He threatened you when you refused to cooperate. He brought accomplices to intimidate you at your own home. Where was his family loyalty? The words hung in the air like a challenge I'd been avoiding. I spent my whole life being the family safety net, I said slowly. When my parents needed money for my brother's medical bills, I gave up college. When Daniel needed help with his business startup, I co-signed loans. When family needed something, I provided it. And in return, I got used. Over and over, the admission felt like lancing a wound. But I told myself that's what family does. Family supports each other. Family doesn't commit crimes against each other. Torres pulled out a legal pad. Mr. Morgan, I'm going to ask you to do something that might feel uncomfortable. What's that? I want you to stop thinking of yourself as Daniel's father for a moment. I want you to think of yourself as a crime victim, because that's what you are. He was right. I'd been so focused on protecting family relationships that I'd lost sight of the fact that Daniel had committed serious crimes against me. What do we do first? We file a police report today. Then we petition for an emergency restraining order. Your son's threatening behavior and pattern of escalation makes you eligible for immediate protection. What about the bank fraud? We report that to the FBI field office. They take identity theft very seriously, especially when it targets elderly victims. Torres pulled out his phone. I'm calling Detective Rodriguez right now. She specializes in financial crimes. While Torres made calls, I stared out his office window at the city below. Somewhere out there, Daniel was probably planning his next move, confident that I'd cave eventually like I always had before. But this time was different. This time I had allies. Torres finished his calls and turned back to me. Detective Rodriguez can see us at 3 today. The restraining order hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., and I've already started drafting the civil complaint. How much is this going to cost me? Nothing. Elder financial abuse cases like this qualify for pro bono representation through the County Bar Association. Your son's crimes are so clear-cut that any lawyer would take this case. I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades, the feeling of being protected instead of providing protection. There's one more thing, Torres said. I want you to change all your passwords, bank account numbers, and any other financial access points your son might know. He's already shown he's willing to steal your information once. I can do that. And Mr. Morgan? Stop answering his calls or texts. From now on, all communication goes through me. Let the law handle your son. As I left Torres's office, my phone buzzed with another message from Daniel. Last chance, Dad. Sign the papers or face the consequences. Instead of the usual knot of anxiety, I felt something different. Relief. Daniel was about to learn that actions have consequences, and those consequences had a badge and handcuffs. I forwarded the message to Torres and headed to the police station. Detective Maria Rodriguez looked like she'd seen every scam in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. She examined my evidence with the practiced eye of someone who dealt with financial crimes daily. Your son's not very smart, she said after reviewing everything. Good forgery, but he left a digital trail a mile wide. The credit inquiries, the electronic documents, even the metadata on these photos shows when and where they were created. Is that enough for charges? More than enough. Identity theft, forgery, attempted fraud, elder abuse, criminal threats. She looked up from the papers. Mr. Morgan, this is one of the clearest cases I've seen. Most family financial abuse is harder to prove because victims don't document evidence like you did. My neighbor helped me understand what to collect. Smart neighbor. We'll need her witness statement about the threatening behavior, too. Rodriguez walked me through the process of filing formal charges. Fingerprints for elimination purposes, detailed statements about the timeline, copies of every piece of evidence. What happens next? Asked. We issue a warrant for your son's arrest. Given the threats and escalation, we'll pick him up today. The restraining order hearing tomorrow will probably result in a no-contact order until trial. The weight of it hit me. My son was going to be arrested because of choices he made, actions he took, crimes he committed. Detective, can I ask you something? Shoot. How often do you see cases like this? Family members committing fraud against each other? Her expression darkened. Too often. Elder financial abuse is the fastest-growing crime in America, and 70% of it is committed by family members. She leaned forward. Mr. Morgan, you did the right thing. These crimes escalate. If you'd signed those papers, he would have come back for more. How do you know? Because they always do. Financial abusers see their victims as unlimited ATMs. It never stops until someone makes it stop. I thought about my parents draining my college fund, then asking for more money when my brother needed physical therapy. She was right. It never would have ended. By the time I got home, word had spread through the neighborhood faster than wildfire. Mrs. Chen met me at my mailbox with a plate of cookies and a concerned expression. "Harold, Sarah told me what's been happening. I can't believe that boy threatened you like that. Did you finish writing down what you saw?" "I did better than that." She pulled out her phone. "Ring doorbell footage. I've got video of the whole thing, including the audio of him threatening you." I stared at the phone in amazement. "You recorded it?" "Motion sensor picked it up automatically. Good thing, too. Now there's no question about what happened." Over the next hour, 3 more neighbors stopped by. Word was spreading that someone had tried to scam elderly Harold Morgan, and the community was rallying. Tom from across the street had seen Daniel's car speeding through the neighborhood multiple times over the past few months. Julie from the corner house remembered Daniel asking her questions about my routines and habits. Everyone had pieces of the puzzle I hadn't even known existed. "He was casing you," Tom said bluntly. "Learning your schedule, figuring out when you'd be home alone, gathering information." The premeditation was even worse than I'd thought. My phone rang, Sarah's name on the display. "Harold, turn on Channel 7 News." I grabbed the remote and flipped to the local news station. A reporter stood outside the county courthouse talking about a disturbing trend in elder financial abuse. "Today, a local retiree filed charges against his own son for identity theft and attempted fraud," the reporter said. "Police say this case highlights the growing problem of family members targeting elderly relatives for financial crimes." They didn't mention names, but the details were unmistakable. Daniel's arrest was going to be public record. "This is getting bigger than I expected," I told Sarah. "Good. Public. Attention protects you, makes it harder for him to spin this as a family misunderstanding." She was right. For too long, family financial abuse had happened in shadows, protected by shame and secrecy. Public exposure changed the dynamics completely. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news. Good for you for fighting back. My brother stole $50,000 from my mother. She was too ashamed to report it. Wish she'd been as brave as you." Then another. "Channel 7 should do a full story on elder abuse. Too many families get away with this." The messages kept coming. Other victims, other families, other people who'd been too scared or ashamed to fight back. I wasn't alone in this anymore. The whole community was watching, supporting, protecting. Tomorrow, Daniel would face a judge. And he'd face them knowing that his crimes were no longer secret. His victim was no longer isolated, and his actions had consequences he'd never anticipated. The folder on my kitchen table was full of evidence, but it was also full of something else. Proof that standing up to abuse was the right choice, no matter how scary it felt. The courthouse was busier than I'd expected on a Thursday morning. Torres met me at the security checkpoint, carrying a briefcase that looked like it weighed 40 pounds. "Ready for this?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, stay calm, stick to facts, and let the evidence speak. Your son's going to try to make this about family dysfunction instead of criminal behavior." We walked through hallways lined with marble and portraits of stern-faced judges. The restraining order hearing was in courtroom 3B, a smaller space than the dramatic courtrooms you see on TV, but somehow more intimidating because it was real. Daniel was already there with his lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman who looked like she charged $1,000 an hour. He wore his best suit and an expression of wounded innocence that would have fooled anyone who didn't know better. When he saw me, his face twisted with hurt and betrayal, like I was the one who'd committed crimes against him. Judge Patricia Hendricks called the court to order and reviewed the petition. Mr. Torres, you're seeking an emergency restraining order based on allegations of financial abuse and criminal threats? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Morgan's son has committed identity theft, attempted bank fraud, and when confronted about these crimes, escalated to threats and intimidation. Daniel's lawyer, Miss Preston, stood immediately. Your Honor, this is a family financial disagreement being blown out of proportion. Mr. Daniel Morgan has never threatened his father. These allegations are the result of a misunderstanding about a legitimate family loan. A legitimate loan? Torres opened his briefcase. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that this was a carefully planned scheme to defraud both Mr. Morgan and a financial institution. The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of documents, testimony, and legal arguments. Torres presented the forged loan papers, the unauthorized credit checks, the threatening text messages, and Mrs. Chen's video footage of Daniel's intimidating behavior. When Judge Hendricks asked me to testify, I stood on shaking legs and walked to the witness stand. Mr. Morgan, please tell the court about the dinner at your son's house. I took a deep breath and told the story. The fake celebration dinner, the folder with forged documents, the demands that I sign immediately, the security guards waiting to escort me out. At any point did you authorize your son to access your credit information or forge your signature? Never, Your Honor. How did you feel when you discovered these documents? Betrayed and scared. If he could forge my signature once, what else might he do with my identity? Daniel's lawyer tried to portray me as a vindictive father punishing his son for financial problems, but the evidence was overwhelming. Video footage of threats, documented identity theft, and a clear pattern of escalating criminal behavior. When Daniel took the stand, his arrogance was stunning. Your Honor, my father has always been the family bank. He paid for my college, my wedding, my business startup. When we needed help this time, he decided to be selfish and cruel. So you forged his signature? Judge Hendricks asked. I knew he'd agree eventually. It was just paperwork. Just paperwork? Mr. Morgan, you do realize that forgery is a felony? Daniel's composure finally cracked. He owes us this money. After everything our family has done for him, we include him in holidays, we invite him to dinner, we treat him like family. And in return, you stole his identity and attempted to defraud a bank? I was trying to save our family. By committing crimes against your father? Daniel's face turned red. He's destroying us over money. What kind of father chooses money over his own son's future? Judge Hendricks's expression turned icy. The kind of father who refuses to enable criminal behavior, apparently. The rest of Daniel's testimony was a disaster. Every question revealed more entitlement, more justification for criminal acts, more evidence that he saw me as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be respected. Judge Hendricks's ruling was swift and decisive. The evidence shows a clear pattern of financial abuse, identity theft, and criminal threats. The restraining order is granted. Mr. Daniel Morgan is prohibited from contacting Mr. Harold Morgan directly or indirectly, from approaching his residence or workplace, and from accessing any financial accounts or information belonging to the petitioner. She turned to Daniel directly. Young man, I've been on this bench for 15 years, and I've never seen such a clear case of elder financial abuse committed with such a sense of entitlement. Your father didn't destroy your family, your choices did. Daniel's face went white as the judge continued. Criminal charges are pending in this matter. I strongly suggest you use the time before trial to reflect on your actions and consider accepting responsibility rather than continuing to blame your victim. As we left the courtroom, Daniel tried to follow me, but the bailiff stopped him. "Sir, you just heard the judge. No contact means no contact." Torres and I walked outside into bright sunlight. The courthouse steps felt like a stage, and I felt like I'd just delivered the performance of my lifetime. "How do you feel?" Torres asked. "Like I can breathe again." My phone was buzzing with messages from neighbors and friends who'd followed the case. Mrs. Chen had organized a small celebration dinner. Sarah wanted to know how it went. Even Detective Rodriguez texted congratulations on standing up to a predator. But the message that meant the most came from a number I didn't recognize. "Saw your case in the news. My daughter stole my retirement money, and I was too ashamed to report it. Your courage gave me the strength to call the police." "Thank you. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was showing other victims that fighting back was possible." Daniel's reign of financial terror was over. And for the first time in decades, I was the one in control. The local news picked up the story that evening. Not just the restraining order, but the full scope of Daniel's crimes. Identity theft, elder abuse, attempted fraud against a financial institution. His picture flashed across television screens throughout the city. I learned about the broadcast from Sarah, who called me in excitement. "Harold, Channel 7 just ran a 10-minute segment on your case. They're calling it a wake-up call about family financial abuse." "Did they mention Daniel by name?" "Oh, honey, they mentioned everything. His full name, his business, the charges. They even interviewed a banking expert who explained how the forged documents could have cost you your entire retirement." The phone calls started immediately. Neighbors expressing support, friends shocked by the story, and strangers sharing their own experiences with family financial abuse. But the most important call came from Detective Rodriguez. "Mr. Morgan, I thought you should know. Daniel's employer just terminated him. Financial consulting firms can't employ people charged with fraud crimes. He's also under investigation by the state licensing board. His professional credentials are in jeopardy." The dominoes were falling faster than I'd anticipated. Over the next few days, the story took on a life of its own. The local newspaper ran a feature about elder financial abuse, using my case as the lead example. Social media posts about the story went viral, with hundreds of comments from people sharing similar experiences. Claire called Sarah's house, knowing I wouldn't answer my phone directly. "Can you ask Harold to drop the charges?" she begged. "Daniel's lost his job. The licensing board is investigating. We're going to lose everything." Sarah's response was ice cold. "Your husband committed multiple felonies against an elderly man. What did you think would happen?" "But the children—" "Should have thought about the children before you helped plan this fraud." Because that was the other shoe that dropped. Detective Rodriguez discovered that Claire had been actively involved in gathering my personal information, accessing my credit reports, and planning the dinner trap. She was arrested 2 days after Daniel. The mansion went up for sale within a week. Unable to make mortgage payments without Daniel's income and facing mounting legal bills, they had no choice but to liquidate everything. I drove past the house once during this period, moving trucks in the driveway, for sale signs on the lawn, and Daniel loading boxes into a rental truck. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 days. Our eyes met across the street. For a moment, I thought he might try to approach me, restraining order or not. Instead, he just stared with an expression I couldn't read. Anger? Regret? Disbelief that his crimes had consequences? I drove away without stopping. Mrs. Chen told me later that Claire had tried to blame everything on Daniel, claiming she was just as much a victim as I was. But the evidence showed otherwise. Text messages between them planning the fraud, her research into my finances, her active participation in the dinner setup. "Some families really are just criminal enterprises," Torres told me during one of our meetings. They see elderly relatives as assets to be liquidated rather than people to be loved. The civil case progressed quickly. With Daniel's criminal conviction virtually guaranteed, his insurance company wanted to settle rather than face a trial. Torres negotiated a substantial award that would more than cover my legal expenses and compensate for the emotional trauma. But the money wasn't the point anymore. The point was that Daniel's crimes had been exposed, stopped, and punished. Other potential victims had been protected. The pattern of family financial abuse that started with my parents had finally been broken. 6 weeks after the courthouse hearing, I received a letter from Daniel in jail. Sarah advised me not to read it, but curiosity won. "Dad, I know you hate me now, but I need you to understand. We were desperate. The business was failing. We were behind on everything, and I panicked. I thought you'd help us if you understood how bad things were. I never meant for it to go this far." The letter continued for 3 pages. Justifications, explanations, and apologies that somehow still made everything my fault for not understanding his situation. I folded the letter and put it in my evidence file. Even from jail, Daniel couldn't take responsibility for his choices. Everything was still someone else's fault. Torres was right. Some people really were just criminal enterprises wearing family faces. 6 months later, I was sitting in my kitchen on a quiet Sunday morning, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. The house felt different now. Peaceful. Safe. Mine. The legal case was over. Daniel had been sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for identity theft and elder abuse. Claire received probation and community service, but her reputation was destroyed. The financial consulting industry was small, and gossip traveled fast. I'd changed banks, phone numbers, and every password I'd ever used. My credit was frozen tight as a drum. No one was accessing my information without my explicit permission ever again. The civil settlement had been generous enough to ensure my financial security for the rest of my life. But more importantly, it had sent a message to other potential family predators. Elder abuse had real consequences. I'd become something I never expected, an advocate for other victims. The prosecutor's office called me regularly to speak with elderly crime victims who were afraid to press charges against family members. My story gave them courage to fight back. "You showed me it was possible," an 80-year-old woman told me after her grandson was arrested for credit card fraud. "If you could stand up to your son, I could stand up to mine." Sarah knocked on my door around noon, carrying a fresh apple pie and the Sunday crossword puzzle we'd taken to solving together. "Any regrets?" she asked as we settled at my kitchen table. It was a question she asked periodically, I think to make sure I wasn't backsliding into guilt or family obligation. "None," I said, and meant it. "Not even about the grandchildren?" That was always the hardest part. Daniel and Claire had moved out of state after their legal troubles, taking my grandchildren with them. I hadn't seen or spoken to them since the courthouse hearing. "I miss them," I admitted. "But children are better off without criminal role models. Maybe someday they'll understand that their grandfather protected himself instead of enabling their parents' crimes. Maybe someday Daniel will understand too." I shrugged. "Maybe. But that's his work to do, not mine." The transformation was complete. I'd spent 70 years being the family bank, the emergency fund, the person who sacrificed so others could have what they wanted. I'd been trained from childhood to believe that family need trumped everything else, including my own well-being. But family wasn't supposed to be a criminal conspiracy. Love wasn't supposed to be conditional on financial support. And protecting yourself from fraud wasn't selfish, even when the criminal was your own son. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Morgan?" "This is Detective Williams from the Fraud Division. We have a case similar to yours. and the victim is afraid to press charges because it's her daughter. Would you be willing to speak with her? Of course. Another family, another elderly victim, another adult child who thought inheritance laws didn't apply to them. The cycle continued, but now there were people willing to break it. I looked around my quiet kitchen, at the evidence files that had been replaced by recipe collections, at the legal documents that had been replaced by library books. This was what peace looked like. "Sarah," I said, "what's a 7-letter word for freedom from oppression?" She smiled. "Justice." I wrote it in the crossword puzzle and underlined it twice. Outside, it was a beautiful day. The garden needed tending, the newspaper had interesting articles to finish, and Mrs. Chen was probably making too much food again and looking for someone to share it with. Life was good when you stopped letting criminals disguised as family members control it. I raised a son, but I refused to raise a criminal. Sometimes protecting yourself means letting go of people who refuse to respect you. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved is to make sure that actions have consequences. The crossword puzzle was complete, the coffee was still warm, and for the first time in my adult life, I owed nobody anything except basic human kindness. That was enough. That was everything.